Welcome to the second episode of the podcast, everybody.
Hello.
So something has happened since the last time we recorded this.
Oh.
Something pretty major. So we've got some big stuff to talk about, I think, for this episode. So in between last episode and this one, they announced and released it simultaneously the Metroid Prime remake for Switch.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So that's huge. That's big. There's a lot to talk about with that one. I remember you were messaging me about it. Like I was taking a nap, and then I woke up and saw like 16 DMs from Felix, and I'm like, oh no, something's gotta happen. so yeah, you were like, red alert.
This is not a drill. And then I was like, the controls feel really good. I'm playing it right now. And you're like, what do you mean you're playing it right now? And I'm like, Tim, you didn't read all that which I wrote you. It's out now. Yeah. It's out right now. I'm playing it.
That was hilarious. I love that little interaction we had. Cause it's kind of like I don't know. Like, dude, the thing you've been waiting for has finally happened. What do you have to say for yourself? And I'm like, I'm sleepy.
Well, I kind of feel like I've been sleeping for 3 days now, and all of this is just a dream. I still can't believe that people care about Metroid Prime enough where they would make this huge remaster and just shadow drop it for $40.
Right? That's crazy, because I guess we can start getting into like what we think of it.
Wait. Before we get into that, I just want to quickly mention, before we get into any judgmental topics, whether they be positive or negative, I just want to neutrally say Metroid's back. Like, it's really back. We're having Prime games, new ones and old ones. The new ones still in development. We got spin-offs, we got remakes, we get a new 2D Metroid 5. How did all of that happen? Like, when I'm watching a direct now, I'm still kinda in the mood like there's not gonna be anything Metroid because Metroid is on hiatus. Well, every big direct of the last couple years had something Metroid.
Yeah.
It's just back. Metroid
Yeah, I guess they did, actually, yeah.
Metroid is being a Nintendo franchise again. It's not that thing from the past anymore. It's now. Metroid is alive. Like, holy shit.
And I'm like kind of, I was like resistant to feel hope again, you know? But like after this Metroid Prime thing, I'm just like, man, maybe this is all a good sign, you know?
Yes. And I mean,
I'm like, yeah.
We're probably gonna touch on rumors sooner or later during this discussion. So maybe there's reason for even more hope. But let's talk about what we've got right now.
Yes. So right now, what's encouraging me about this Prime remake is that it is the most faithful Prime remaster you could probably ask for.
True.
Because it's literally just Metroid Prime, beginning to finish. Nothing changed about it. Nothing, messed up or added about it. It's just the pure experience that you had in 2002, but with higher fidelity graphics, which, in my opinion, are really faithful to the original feel of the game.
Which is probably why they are calling it a remaster, not a remake, which has already sparked a discussion online. Like, where's the line between a remaster and a remake? And Metroid Prime Remastered is really blurring the line again because it's such a high quality remaster.
Yeah, and the only thing they added was just control options, I think.
They added so many options. It's so great. once more, I can't believe I'm not dreaming. I once told you, I wish we would get a Metroid Prime which has your standard dual stick controls, the GameCube controls, the Federation Force style hybrid controls, and the Wii pointer using the Joy-Cons. And now that's reality. And I'm like, holy shit.
They read my diary.
Is Retro spying on us? There's even more control options. Like you got your native Switch button remapping options, of course. But there's even stuff like you can control...
Swap the XY buttons.
Exactly, you can control how quickly Samus will turn, which is even interesting if you're just playing with... Yeah, if you're just playing the standard GameCube control scheme from back then, for example, and you feel like your tanky Samus is maybe a bit too slow in turning around, you can, I think, turn it up to twice the speed or 3 times the speed, something like that.
Ah, I didn't see that option.
There's a lot of options. You have the option to have your aim unlocked while locked onto a target, just like
yeah,
but yeah, exactly. But you also have that when you're playing dual stick, so you can lock on, and then use the stick to aim independently of your lock on. That's another option.
That's cool.
I think you can set the sensitivity of each axis independently, and you can also invert each axis independently. There's a lot of options. It's great.
There's one option I didn't see that I wish was there was, okay, so if you've noticed, when you're trying to do a charge beam, it'll like shoot like 5 or 6 bullets before it actually starts charging for some reason.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of a callback to Prime Hunters, maybe, where the Prime Hunters did the same thing.
Yes,
and maybe it just makes rapid fire a bit easier for some people, I guess. But for me, I'm used to just like hitting it once and letting it charge. So like sometimes I'm in battle and like I want to charge beam like quickly, and then it's just like not giving it to me.
Yes. As you know, I replay Metroid Prime basically every year, so this did mess up my muscle memory a little bit. But I don't mind it too much. Really, it should have just been a toggle option, you know?
Yes, it's still playable, but I would like for that option to be able to be, disabled.
You know why they added that little feature? Because
I think for rapid fire.
Yes.
For people to easily not have to mash to rapid fire.
But the problem is not the people. The problem is the fingers. Because...
I just love that statement you made.
Yeah, it's not about some people being able or unable to rapid fire. It's about the fact that you can more easily rapid fire with your thumb, but not as well with your fingers, with your index.
Oh, your
fingers.
Trigger finger, right? Because it's like dual stick.
And dual stick is the standard control scheme for this, which is interesting. And I don't mind it at all, actually. I think it's very appropriate. And as long as I still have the option to play with GameCube controls, I'm fine. And I think everybody who hasn't played the original GameCube release is probably gonna want to play with dual sticks anyway. So that being the standard option...
That will be the default for most people, yeah.
So I'm fine with that. I tested it a little bit. Plays really good. I think I'm gonna try playing a whole playthrough in dual stick, which I'm also doing because I get the feeling we're gonna get a remastered Echoes and Corruption, and in Corruption,
perhaps
we're gonna need some more aiming, you know. So it'd be good to warm up.
Did you know? I did notice one thing they added to the game, which is spoilers, but the Elite Pirate. Or the Omega Pirate has cannons on his back that you have to shoot at to like break them.
The Omega Pirate always had those.
I never noticed those.
Well, I beat the Omega Pirate so quickly on my playthrough that he didn't get to use them, and it's usually
you just super missile him like 5 times and he's dead.
Yes. The Omega Pirate is quite easy if you know what you're doing. If you don't, he's really difficult.
Yeah.
There's a couple of tiny changes, which are very subtle. I don't think there's any change that I really mind. There's nothing which can outweigh the huge positive advantages of this version.
Mm-hmm.
And in the future, I'm gonna have one more Metroid Prime version to pick from. And if I want to replay Metroid Prime for the aesthetics or the atmosphere, I think Remastered is often gonna be my first choice because it's so
Yeah.
faithful to the original while improving its visuals so much.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm actually so proud of how they were able to. Proud. This is not the right word. So glad that they were able to remain this faithful to the art style.
Yeah. And I gotta say, it's kind of crazy. They take a 20-year-old GameCube game, they just put a new polish on there, and suddenly it's the best-looking Switch game. What do you say about that? It's the best-looking Switch game, in my opinion, together with maybe Alien Isolation. Luigi's Mansion 3 is pretty impressive too.
Yeah.
But Prime runs 60 frames per second. Luigi Mansion 3 doesn't.
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah, the remaster plays so smooth. And I was gonna ask you, did you notice a single door being stuck because of loading times?
No, that's what something I noticed is that the doors were pretty much instant. Yeah,
Yes.
there's no loading times in between like trying to like get out of like you ever just like have enemies following you to the edge of a room and you're trying to just get through the door and then you have to wait for it to load. Yeah. There was none of that in this remaster.
None of
like
that.
The load times were instant. Yeah.
It's great. It's so great. Really, we're gushing over this remaster, but it deserves to be gushed over. It's really good.
Yeah. It took basically anything that the original Prime game and any limitations of the GameCube and just kind of took those out.
Yeah. It took the one aspect which every video game will age in, the visuals, and updated it. Everything else is still up to date. The gameplay, the sound design.
Yeah.
And controls have always been a matter of preference, so they just leave it to you and give you plenty of options. Boom, there you go. Basically, an almost perfect remaster of an almost perfect game.
Pretty much, yeah. There were a few like chinks in the armor, just a few like imperfections that both of us noticed,
Yes.
and a couple other people online noticed, which I would hope for a patch to fix those. Just like minor things like okay, the doors don't look quite the same, and apparently the artist who worked on the original doors on the GameCube version had mentioned that, and he was like, oh, I noticed this was a flaw here, so hopefully that will reach people on the team. And then another thing would be reflections. There's actually no dynamic reflections in the game at the moment, which, or maybe not none in the game, but like in many rooms, there's just kind of no reflections, which makes the metallic surfaces, like Samus's entire suit and everything, look a little too dark in certain situations. I don't know if you noticed that, but
I did, yes.
Well, yeah, so that would not be a hard fix either if they just had some, cube maps, some reflection probes, like if I was to use the Unity terminology. So I would hope they would patch that in, just go through each room and just add some reflection setups.
I'm also hoping for such a patch, but I'm also gonna go out there and say if they never patch this, if we just get what we got now, I'm still very happy with the results.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was one thing that was being speculated was, okay, so maybe the visuals just looked so good that they forgot that they didn't add the reflections because it just looked like a complete picture already.
I mean, it's not entirely the same engine anymore. It's still basically the same engine, which is impressive, but it's a more updated version. It's probably closer to the Tropical Freeze version of the engine.
Yeah.
So maybe some features aren't present anymore, or they are being handled very differently. Reflections, for example,
Yeah.
you do have material reflections now, which the original Prime didn't have. Obviously, it didn't have that. That's a very resource-heavy thing to have in your video game.
Like screen
GameCube.
space, you mean?
You have, for example, screen space. For example, you have like some fake HDR, some fake bloom lighting, which looks really good. And as you probably also noticed, the textures aren't just textures anymore. Many of them seem to have tethering or bump mapping or something like that.
Yeah, no, normal maps. Yeah, they've
maps,
definitely like upgraded the materials. And that was one point actually in my video, which I was saying was like the only thing I think GameCube Prime really lacks is like advanced shaders and stuff like that. But now with this remake, they pretty much have put in those advanced shaders and stuff. You got like really nice looking materials on all the objects in the game.
And they didn't go overboard. Some modern games have so much like post-processing that everything looks like it's plastic covered in loop. This looks very good naturally.
I like the landscapes. Those are probably the strongest point of this this remaster, is like all the natural landscapes. So you'll see the Chozo Ruins, the Magmore Caverns, the Phendrana Drifts, all of the terrain, the earth, looks straight out of a photograph, and I love that.
Yeah.
It's reminding me of one thing I noticed about the game Star Wars Battlefront 2 from EA. If nothing else, that game had some really nice environments. And this Prime remaster kind of started to remind me of how I felt about those environments in that game when I was watching it.
I'll agree. There are some scenes in here now which do leave the impression of photorealism. And I also agree that the natural environments had a greater benefit from this upgrade than the artificial environments. Both still look great. But the GameCube was already pretty good at rendering an impressive frigate Orphan, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But it did have a little bit of problems, like rendering a jungle environment, like Talon 4 Overworld.
Mm-hmm.
These problems are behind us now.
Yeah, the you don't see any seams or edges or anything, and like the resolution on the leaves and everything. You were saying that there was that big stanky leaf in the opening cutscene.
The meme leaf.
Yeah, that one was upscaled as well.
Yes. When I was a kid, I didn't even get it. I didn't even understand that was supposed to be a leaf. I thought maybe this is like an old artifact left there by the Chozo. Something that broke off a statue and has just been laying there. And then later I realized, like, holy shit, this is one ugly leaf. And since we are on the topic of ugly things in Metroid Prime being fixed in the remaster, what do you say about that water?
Oh, I think so. The water, I'd have to go look back and look at the GameCube stuff, but the water looks like it has some reflections, but I think it might also be suffering from that like lack of reflections. But I think the fluid of it is fine. It looks all right. Just a little flat to me.
Well, the water in the original Metroid Prime looked pretty bad. Everybody back then noticed. Reviewers were like, this game has the best graphics ever, except for the water, which looks like an N64 game.
Yeah, so maybe the water is something that received maybe the fewest benefits of a remaster.
I would say it received a lot because now it actually has a water shader. It looks like a liquid now. And, which is funny, despite the fact that the water in the original Prime looked pretty poor, it was technically impressive because the surface was subdivided if you shot it into smaller vertices. So you actually had depth to the water surface and you had actual ripples, three-dimensional ripples. But that was only technically impressive. Visually, it just looked boring. They could have just have a ripple texture appear and spread out. Would have been the same effect. Now they brought back that feature. And now it's really impressive if you fire, for example, a charged ice beam, which has a lot of energy, into a big pool of water. The ripple will basically go over the entire, little pond or whatever it is. And if you fire the wave beam into it, all three shots will have their little ripple, which of course then hit each other and then it gets a bit more complex. It's pretty neat. They basically said we had a technically interesting solution back in Prime and nobody appreciated it because it looked kind of poor. We'll do that same thing again, but this time we're gonna make it look good.
Okay, I guess I didn't experiment too much with the water. I did shoot it like once when I was playing, but
lava's looking good too.
Oh, I love the lava. Yeah, they changed it and they added a shader that does like heat waves coming off of it.
Yes.
And like, lots of little like floating particles and stuff. I love the particles in the game. They've added particles to basically like every room.
Yeah. You can see the dust lingering in the air, the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so nice.
And the volumetric lighting as well. I love that.
Yes.
Every room in the Chozo Ruins feels even more like dilapidated and just like dry because of the volumetric lighting.
They also used a little art trick. The doors are illuminated and they shine their light onto the floor. So when I was playing this remaster, I immediately wondered, is that blue light gonna disappear when I shoot the door and it opens up? Because that means you gotta have a source of dynamic lighting, otherwise it couldn't disappear, right?
Right.
But they just decided to have lights within the door frame. So the door opens and there's still light. So they don't even have to have dynamic lighting. It's
I saw that. There's blue lighting inside the door frame. Well, the only thing is when you've reached the wave beam doors and the plasma beam doors, the light is the same color?
No. It's the color of the door, which means if you have a door which is on one side a power beam door and a wave beam door on the other side, you have two lights inside, a blue one and a purple one. But that means they didn't have to craft a technical solution to how the light is going to shine on the floor. The explanation is just, well, the door is open now, but the light is still coming from within the door frame because that one is also shining. I
remember that.
Which is a very simple and elegant solution.
Yeah. And they didn't have to bake out like some kind of alpha channel like lighting texture to like place on the base of every door,
Nah, they could just bake the lighting for the doors and have the art explain to you why a light source is there, which is basically what they did with the original Prime.
That's cool. I like that.
What I noticed is that your beams, they still do illuminate their surroundings, but the effect is so subtle you basically have to force it. That's a bit weird.
One thing that I noticed was the changes to the ice, the way the ice looks in every instance. So if you're shooting it, if you're charging it, it's just gonna look like normal ice, like rather than being kind of just like a blue glowing kind of overlay, it ends up looking like actual ice with like lighting and stuff.
Yeah. The original Metroid Prime was really good at giving the impression of realism. But this one just outright manages to often look realistic,
Yeah.
which is impressive. I also noticed that maybe I'm criticizing a bit of inconsistency here. I'm not quite sure yet. Some of the new character designs looked a little bit more cartoony.
Not that I've noticed.
Especially the Omega Pirate. He looked more cartoony to
Oh,
me.
you know what I noticed? I did notice the Shegoth, the Mama Shegoth,
Yeah.
had those angry eyes.
Yeah, it looked a bit more aggressive.
Which I was like, oh, that's cool actually. Yeah, like they gave it literally like angry eyes.
They slightly redesigned every character in the game. Interestingly enough, with the standard enemies, you barely notice it. The bosses, though, you see the difference with the bosses. Like the Parasite Queen has more pronounced, like, exoskeleton parts to it now, and it has a red hue to it.
Yeah.
And
it looks more like one of those little parasites, but just bigger.
Yes, yes. And the Omega Pirate, I think, has a new jaw.
Okay, yeah.
The Shegoth, the adult Shegoth, looks noticeably different. By the way, none of these are now bad things. I'm just noticing stuff.
Yeah, yeah. These are like stuff that, like, we're kind of getting into stuff that, like, maybe I didn't notice, maybe you didn't notice, but we just kind of individually kind of took notice of things.
Yeah. I had one section where the performance of my game completely tanked. And it was in how were they called? Ice beetles. The ice beetles caused my game to completely tank in performance.
Really?
So much so that it couldn't have been the game just not being able to keep up with what is visually being processed.
Right, because I didn't get lag when I was fighting ice beetles.
It wasn't just lag. I basically had 1 frame per second as soon as those beetles spawned.
Yeah. And that must have been some kind of fluke. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a bug. I tried to recreate it, but going into these rooms now, the second time, the bug didn't happen anymore. Maybe it's a really strange thing. Maybe it only happens when you have exactly 25 missile containers and you are wearing the gravity suit and you don't have more than 7 energy tanks. Only then it happens, you know?
Yeah, yeah. What was I gonna? I had something else to say. I don't remember. Did we talk about the differences enough?
Maybe more differences will come to mind as we talk. But the point being is, there are not many differences. This is still Metroid Prime. And the differences we get are mostly in favor of a fantastic redesign of its visuals.
Yeah. It's like the original vision is kept intact.
I would agree. Yeah. I told you I have a friend that I want to introduce to Metroid Prime. Well, I'm just gonna have her play this remastered version now. She's gonna have more fun with these modern controls. You can easily play it on an HD screen with nice image and sound quality. And afterwards, I'm still gonna feel like she experienced Metroid Prime. Not a reinterpretation of Metroid Prime. No, she played Metroid Prime actually.
Nice. Yeah, yeah. It would have been basically, this experience is straight out of 2002 pretty much. And that's one thing. So like after Dread released, and I saw kind of how it was, sweeping any exploration under the rug a little bit, kind of just making sure the player never gets lost. It makes sure that, there's there's always like something blocking the player from going too far backwards so that they don't lose the way and all of that. And then, it puts more focus on action, and, backtracking is usually handled with teleporters and stuff like that. I was under the impression that, Nintendo and modern audiences, that's just what they thought was necessary for a gaming experience, and that's just what the majority of people expect, But like to see Nintendo basically re-releasing Prime nearly unaltered in its gameplay, just with a few like control scheme enhancements. And of course, the hint system is still a thing, but so it was also a thing in 2002. But it makes me think that this kind of game design, Metroid Prime's style of making games, is still relevant even today.
Especially since people are very positively reacting to this game.
Yeah, especially the insane positive reaction towards it. Yeah. It kind of, that's the kind of spark of hope that I saw, where I'm like, okay, so people aren't, marching one direction into just pure erasure of exploration gameplay.
Yes.
In all games, basically.
I must say, despite me still being disappointed with Dread, I kind of find it less offensive now that we have Prime Remastered. It's kind of like back in the day, Fusion also wasn't the greatest Metroidvania, but you still had Prime.
Right.
And now we're kind of in the same situation anymore, where I'm like, okay.
Well, it doesn't improve my opinion of Dread.
No, but it makes it easier to accept the facts, let's say.
It makes it gives me another point of reference to point to if people start talking about, this and that kind of game design. Well, this is what's absolutely necessary for games. You're going to frustrate the player otherwise, that kind of thing. I can point to, the Prime Remaster as an example of game design that still works in 2023 and onwards.
Yeah, I was really surprised that they didn't do much to ease players into Prime nowadays, It's basically about as, let's call it, hardcore as it was back then. I only noticed one thing they made a little bit easier. It's something I actually agree to. When you go into Magma Caverns the first time, and you're in that big room where the iconic theme starts playing, you need to bump open a specific point in the wall.
Oh yes, I remember that, yeah.
That wall has some cracks now. It didn't in the GameCube version. In the GameCube version, you basically just had to figure it out on your own. Maybe you were trying to destroy the boxes in front of it with a morph ball bomb, and then you find out by accident there's a hallway behind there, little morph ball shaft.
Yeah.
This time it's actually telegraphed, which is a change I agree with personally.
Yeah, I think that in this 3D game where there's not like, definite tiles that you can check on, putting a little crack in a breakable surface is more necessary than it would have been in 2D.
I also noticed that some of the optional items to find are, in my opinion, better hidden now, just because of the graphical fidelity. Easy example, in Show the Ruins, the main plaza, there's this halfway dead tree, which has like a broken off, how do you say it? It's a broken off limb.
Branch?
A branch, yes, a giant branch which has broken off. And that is destructible. If you fire a super missile at it, a hole opens with a missile container in there. In the GameCube version, it was kind of obvious because the whole branch was kind of surrounded by wood and it looked like a separate piece. Here it looks just like part of the tree.
I don't. It's yeah. Oh, you're saying because it was like a You're saying it's a broken branch. It's yeah. There's a stump
Yes,
where
it's like a
yeah where a
stump. Yeah,
branch used to be that you need to shoot at. Yeah.
exactly. And in the newer version, it looks so organic that I imagine that secret is gonna be harder to find than in the GameCube version. There's a couple of secrets where I'm kind of like, the telegraphing of a secret is less obvious now, just because the environments are even more detailed now.
Yeah, and I've noticed that with certain puzzles with melting ice in the Phendrana Drifts, where you will not, it won't be immediately obvious that there's ice to be melted there. So you have to, I think, scan it to realize, oh, this surface is ice, because the
Yes.
ice is kind of reflective. It's not, super bluish like ice usually is in games.
Yeah, in the original Prime, ice usually was destructible ice usually was a blue tinted window, basically.
Yeah,
A glass
basically.
window. Now it looks just like ice, which is a plentiful material in Phendrana Drifts. You also can't look through it as easily anymore. If you look through ice or holograms,
It'll like distort.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Which looks great, but also makes secrets a bit more subtle, even.
Yeah. Did you make it through the entire game?
Yes, just today I was actually kind of rushing through it because I wanted to finish it before we talk about it. But I also was so close to 100% that I decided I'm not gonna do it any percent. I'm doing 100% all items, all scans. So I had to walk through the entire map again for a little
Oh
cleanup.
my god. Dude, you're way more dedicated than me. I finished with like 85%.
Now I got 100 on both. And
did you see this? Was there a secret cutscene?
yes, Dark Summer's cutscene is still intact. And this is gonna ease us into some rumors later on. Right now, all I'm gonna say right now is, I think we both know what this means. That this cutscene hasn't been replaced for a Prime 4, hint. It's still an Echoes reference. I think I know what that means.
Did the hand coming out of the Phazon look like Dark Samus's hand from Prime 2, or did they keep it looking like weird eyeball thing or whatever?
Weird eyeball thing from Prime 1. Still faithful even in this little extra nugget cutscene.
Okay. Interesting. So, yeah. There were there were some idiosyncrasy, I think that's the right word I'm trying to use. Some inconsistencies with art style, with the rest of the Prime series that Prime 1 had, which seems to have been kept intact with this remaster.
I think one reason for that is because this is still Metroid Prime running. If they had, for example, implemented the various suit design from Echoes, then they probably would have needed to fix some animations and hitboxes which aren't accurate anymore.
Yeah.
And they probably didn't want to bother with that. And the second reason, which I appreciate, is probably because they wanted to be faithful. So we're not getting corruption-styled space pirates. We're not getting an Echo-styled Varia suit. Everything is still Metroid Prime. The only difference I noticed is that Samus does not take her helmet off anymore physically. She has a little button she pushes and the helmet disintegrates, which is how the suit is handled in later Metroid
at the
games.
very ending. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You could almost miss it.
Oh.
You could almost miss it because that's not the shot where the camera focuses on her face. It's still the shot where the camera focuses on the impact crater, and Samus is very small in the bottom left corner when she takes off the helmet. So if you're not focusing on that, you may not even notice she has disintegrated her helmet instead of just taking it off physically.
Speaking of the impact crater, how did you like the redesign of that?
You mean the interior?
Yeah.
Well, it's another case where an organic design really benefits from this remaster. But I liked even more the Phazon mines because I think blue Phazon looks incredible in this game.
Oh yeah, they made it. I that's one thing I think they improved on is they made the blue Phazon look closer to Prime 3, I think, but they added like this kind of amorphous kind of glow to it where it'll like be dark and then light and then dark again like at random, and then they added particles and tendrils and stuff.
It looks beautiful and yet threatening at the same time, which is just how Phazon should look in my opinion.
I went out of my way to so when you're playing the game, if you exit the Chozo ruins before doing a whole lot and then you go back to the crashed frigate, you will see some pirates standing in front of a busted up canister of Phazon.
Yes.
And so I intentionally went back to go look at that and to see the Phazon, and that's still there. That's really cool.
Yeah. Most little design Easter eggs you could have found in the original Prime seem to have returned here. One specific example, I believe it's in Phendrana Drifts in the Space Pirate Research Station. There's just a dead fish laying on some crates.
The fuck?
Most people won't notice it because there's a battle taking place there, and if you or the space pirates accidentally explode the crates, the fish just despawns. But if you keep the crates intact, the fish will still lay there. You know probably what fish design it is, because the same fish appear in another spot in Phendrana Drifts, frozen in ice.
Oh, those fish.
Kind of like piranha fish with big teeth.
Yeah, okay.
That fish is still there in the remastered, and yes, it has been remastered, the fish.
The fish is looking nice. Fish is looking beautiful.
It really seems as if they took a fine comb and went through the entire, folder hierarchy structure of Metroid Prime visual assets and completely remade every single one of them.
That's what's kind of, I think it's kind of obvious that they took the original Prime and I think ported it to the new engine, and I guess it was a pretty seamless port, right?
Probably.
And then just updated the visuals, because like the movement is identical, like most of the mechanics are just identical. The ones that they didn't change for the control scheme. One thing I don't like about the new control scheme for the GameCube emulation, is the lack of the analog trigger, which I know is just not an option, but there were many moments in my playthrough where I just wanted to strafe without locking on to anything, and it like turned my focus towards like some enemy, and then I just ended up dashing off a ledge, trying to jump to the side and like kind of readjust myself.
Did you play with an original GameCube controller?
No, I played it with the Pro controller.
Yeah, I had something similar to a Pro controller too. The game does support the GameCube controller if you have the Smash GameCube controller to USB adapter.
Oh, shoot, I should have done that.
But the implementation is a bit shoddy. That's another thing I hope they will address with a patch.
Do they not have analog?
That's the first issue. No analog. But maybe that isn't even possible on Switch. Maybe the Switch just doesn't support it. In that case, it wouldn't be Metroid Prime Remastered's fault. But there's also an oversight. With the new default control scheme, you do not open the map anymore with any of the shoulder buttons. You press
you can actually
button.
set that up.
True, but
you can actually...
but default is plus now, which you could call the start button, right?
Right.
And the main menu or pause screen is minus or select.
Yes.
Well, the GameCube controller doesn't have a select button. You cannot open the pause menu. You can open the map by pressing start, but you cannot open the pause menu at all.
Oh, you're right.
So if you want to read up on some older logbook entry, or you want to play around in the options, you're gonna have to take your second controller. The GameCube controller cannot do that.
That they should just map it correctly.
Yeah, right. I guess they probably didn't even plan to implement GameCube controller support, and then
You know what?
And then they were
You know
like,
what's happening?
they were like, let's just unlock the option for the USB port thing. We were not gonna even map it. It's
Yeah,
1 minute of
that's
work.
what happens. So like
Yeah.
when the Switch gets a GameCube controller plugged into it, it treats it like a Pro controller.
Yes, exactly. And they were
Unless it's Smash, I
Yeah.
think.
And then they were kind of like, let's just leave the option turned on. Let's enable that. Somebody is gonna appreciate it. And even maybe I'm gonna play it with the original GameCube controller. I can digest one playthrough of Prime without a pause menu. I'm gonna read every scan as soon as I get it anyway.
Here's one thing I had the thought of, which was I still think that the original GameCube release still has a place.
Yes.
And I believe that, maybe down the road, I might still be playing the GameCube one just out of purism.
Purism, nostalgia, historic relevancy, the slight differences in art style. I'm certainly gonna keep playing Metroid Prime in its original form too, but the remastered version is gonna stand right next to its side and is always gonna be like, you could play me instead. And I think for the next time, just because this thing is so recent and all, and I'm still impressed by it so much, for the next time, Metroid Prime Remastered is gonna be my standard choice for the near future.
Yeah, so like you play the remastered, then you play Echoes, and then Corruption. Now, this is assuming that they hadn't released any remasters of any other Prime games.
Yes, I would do that. I wouldn't have an issue with that. The old games are still beautiful enough where you're not gonna feel like let down playing Echoes after Prime
It'll
Remastered.
still mesh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're still in the same world, it's fine. But since you mentioned it, I'm gonna get into rumors here right now. I believe we're gonna get Echoes Remastered and Corruption. I'm almost certain of it. I do not claim to know anything, I'm not a leaker. My uncle doesn't work at Nintendo, but I strictly believe this is heading towards us.
And the leakers are like, ringing the bells that there's going to be a trilogy coming,
There have been leaks and rumors about a Metroid Prime Remaster. If we assume those leaks were correct, and all they got wrong was just the release date, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we have some more information to work with, because those leakers claim the Metroid Prime Remaster has been finished for years now. And what they are saying is the following. So, Retro Studios probably had a bit of a hard time for a couple of years, which is why their output was so low.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were kind of like, we're in trouble, we need to do something. How about we impress Nintendo by remastering our original game, Metroid Prime? And apparently they did so without Nintendo knowing that. Meanwhile, Nintendo was like, we need to revisit the Prime franchise for the Switch. Let's make a Metroid Prime 4, but not with Retro Studios. So Nintendo was preparing a Prime 4 without Retro Studios knowing that. And then it got a bit awkward, because Retro Studios was like, well, you're doing our Prime 4 without us, and we didn't tell you, but we remade Prime 1.
Yeah.
You know?
That would have been a heartbreaker.
That's possibly what happened. And then the studio which was producing Prime 4 was fucking up pretty hard from what we know. So then Nintendo was kind of like, Retro had a hard time, but this remaster is fucking impressive. Let's give them Prime 4. But if this story is correct, then that means that Metroid Prime Remastered has probably been finished for 2 or 3 years now and just been sitting there, if not
Yeah.
longer, which could also mean that maybe Retro already finished work on Echoes and Corruption Remastered. Maybe these games already exist and are just waiting to be released. Maybe Prime 4 is starting to finally come together, and maybe Nintendo is like, alright, Prime 4 is looking good, we can release that in, let's say, a year and a half. Let's start releasing the remasters now. So maybe E3, they're gonna be like, here's the Echoes remaster. Next year in February, they're gonna be like, here's Corruption Remastered. And then
that'd
the
be
next
like a
E3,
year-long orgasm, dude.
That would be great. And no, I do not mind paying 3 times $40 for this, even if it's double the price of the trilogy. The trilogy was an enhanced port. This is a remaster bordering on a full-blown remake. I think $40 is well warranted.
I thought you were saying $40 is Valve type pricing.
No, it's not as good. It's not Orange Box good, but it's still a very good price. And I also want to quickly mention how shitty is like the price value proposition, let's call it, of something like Skyward Sword HD now, which is $60, more expensive than the original Skyward Sword. And
Plus,
it does so little to improve the original. And now we have Prime here, which is already a great game. Visually, basically a remake in its entirety.
Yeah.
And it's just $40.
It's so affordable.
Yeah.
It's the price of a 3DS game, dude.
Yes.
Can you imagine that?
Yes. I checked whether I can already pre-order the physical version, because unfortunately in Germany we have to wait a little longer for the physical version. So I got curious. And I already found a retailer who's selling it at like $37. So it's getting even... Excuse me. It's getting even cheaper than that. So no, I don't have a problem with Nintendo not releasing a Metroid Prime Trilogy Remastered. This is a very acceptable, proposition. I'm willing to pay that. I'm getting my money's worth.
Were you part of talking about the rumor that it's like Retro was probably not the most involved in this, where they had hired a bunch of artists from the industry, and
they certainly hired a lot of professionals from other dev studios for commissions. That's just evident by the new credits. There's 9 other development studios listed. But I don't see that as a problem, because A, this is a side project, basically. The big meat is Prime 4. And even before Retro Studios started development on Prime 4, they basically had, I assume they probably had bigger releases planned, all of which fell through because they had trouble making quality games for whatever reason, But I think Metroid Prime Remastered never was more than a side project for them, because we know for a fact that Retro Studios used to be big enough to work on 2 projects at once. You just never saw the results of that, because that time overlapped with their hiatus. So what I think happened here is that a small part of Retro Studios worked on this, but with a certain, let's say, financial investment. They had some money to spare, some Nintendo money, Maybe from Tropical Freeze or something, I don't know. And so they basically said, we don't have the entire studio working on it. We're gonna outsource all of the asset creation.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, because that's how you do video games nowadays. It's not like back with the original Prime, where the 3D modeler could also just draw the rock texture. nowadays the rock texture has probably like 124 different layers, and it took like 500 hours to draw that one rock and have all the normal mapping correct, you know?
Well, it's a bit exaggerated, but yeah.
I'm exaggerating, but basically you have specialists now for this. It's not just a texture anymore. You have people develop materials for your assets. It's not unusual for a developer to, commission help from outside to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
You don't need retro studios to be able to create every imaginable material.
Especially since they had the originals to work from. They what would you call that? Just like
reference,
like a brand reference. Yeah.
I think that's what happened. They basically said, we have a commission.
They're all just basically being like Nerold is with the Majora's Mask retexture.
Yes. Yeah, they basically commissioned outside studios, being like, listen, we need, let's say...
Oh, I'm sure Nerold's going to have something to say about it, like the texture work.
That's going to be interesting. I mean, it's kind of hard to make a one-to-one comparison, because it's not just a redrawn texture. Every asset has been replaced by a more sophisticated version of that asset. You probably noticed that...
The models are different.
Yes, the designs for the Space Pirate PC monitors, they've been changed.
Maybe a little bit. I don't think I noticed, because I wasn't holding the original in front of me. So I may have played the shit out of this game, but I haven't, memorized every texture.
Yeah. I have. No, not everyone. Not every single
I did notice
texture.
There was some like colorful surfaces on the Chozo ruins where some like hieroglyphs were made and stuff like that.
Yeah. They did allow themselves to slightly alter a design here and there where it was appropriate,
Yeah.
So maybe
I'm good with that.
Yeah, maybe you had like a sculpture which was entirely bronze or brown, and now it has some hinges of white and a little black, and it looks a bit more crafted and all of that. Different materials. Completely fine with it. The overall impression of the game is still that of Metroid Prime, so I'm fine with that.
Like, you're having us, who are probably like the biggest like Metroid snobs, like hipsters.
Yeah.
And we're not able to find like anything major to complain about.
Not really, no. Like I said, I already finished this game, and when we are done talking, I may go back and try hard mode, maybe with a different control scheme.
Yeah. I did last night try out a few of the different control schemes, and I will say the dual stick is fine. I couldn't get used to it though, but the emulation of like Wii controls was really nice.
Yeah, I'm curious to check that out too.
The only thing is, I think it was a bit low sensitivity, so maybe I could turn that up or something, because I would like be whipping the controller like left and right, and the reticle just wouldn't follow in real time.
Yeah.
But that might be a sensitivity thing.
Yeah.
I do like it, because on the Wii it was like 1-to-1, because it was just basically outputting where your pointer was physically in relation to the thing.
Yeah, it had the little infrared sensors which made the motion controls for the pointer so much more accurate. Unfortunately, Metroid Prime Remastered is not going to be able to replicate that, but I still appreciate the option a lot. I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to enjoy it, even if I'm not going to enjoy it as much as the Wii Motion version. But I do want to test every control scheme out of curiosity.
Yeah. I have not tried hybrid, but that might even be better, because it's literally GameCube, but with a little bit of motion control, so you can kind of move your aim a little bit better.
Yeah, I also want to be somewhat efficient with every control scheme, just because I'm not entirely certain what's ahead of us. Like, are we gonna get Echoes and Corruption remastered? Well, when we're playing Corruption, you need some more aim in there, so I'm probably not gonna want to play that with a strict GameCube control style
of course
option.
not. Yeah, the only ones I'm interested in playing GameCube controls on are the ones that are built around it. Yeah,
Exactly. And we also don't know which direction Prime 4 will be taking. Maybe Prime 4 will best be played with dual stick controls, so it couldn't hurt.
That's my thought.
Yeah, so it couldn't hurt if I already, got a bit comfy with playing Metroid Prime with a dual stick control.
Yeah.
And I'm quite happy for those.
There's not a bad option there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm quite happy for those people who regularly play shooter games on consoles and now are really enjoying Prime with dual stick. Because I'm gonna be open with you.
Outside of Prime Hack, you couldn't really get them to play Prime, right?
I don't play shooters on console, usually. I play them on PC. So I'm pretty bad with dual stick controls. But that doesn't mean I'm bitter towards those who have mastered dual stick. Like, I'm really happy they can just enjoy this great game the way they want to control it.
Yes. Yeah, more control options is good. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Something to strive for.
Some people have complained about the thermal visor now being blurry instead of sharp. But
I believe that feels more like a real life thermal, like infrared sensor.
Predator vision.
Because you're gonna get some visual noise if you're just looking at heat signatures.
Yeah, they even added.
It's not gonna be a 1-to-1. Yeah.
They even added a bit of visual lag, I believe, if you look around.
Some ghosting.
Yeah, there's some ghosting.
Because there's some delay between when the heat signatures are like detected and stuff, and just how the technology works, right?
And I love it. It's just one more immersive quality about this game. And any amount of uncertainty you could have introduced by making it more blurry is immediately cleared by having this higher resolution image, which you couldn't have on GameCube.
And I think it should be more blurry because you're not supposed to be spending all your time in that mode. Like just in the dark, basically. Yes. So it's good. I like the trade-off.
Yeah, I like it too. Sorry, they also added a couple of those tiny little Metroid Prime trademark details, which weren't even in the original, if I remember correctly. For example, if you rapid fire while your thermal visor is on.
I noticed that too, yes.
Your cannon starts heating up, and you can even see the heat, which is coming from the front edge, slowly pushing itself through the seams towards your, face. I don't think that was in the original. That's new, I believe. No. That's awesome.
One thing I also wanted to mention, I didn't check this, but did you notice if the X-ray visor showed Samus's hand?
Yes, it does. And they remodeled the skeleton. It looks more like an actual skeleton hand now.
That's awesome. Because I remember the only time that was a thing was in Prime 3, if I remember.
You also had it in the original Prime, but it was much simpler. You could see it really great in Prime 3, of course, because that game highlighted interesting points in red with the X-ray visor.
Okay, so maybe I just hadn't maybe I'm just misremembering.
It's really subtle in the original GameCube release of Prime. You do see her skeleton hands, but you have to really look at it, or otherwise you're gonna miss it.
The attention to detail here is just amazing. Like the stuff that they didn't forget about.
Yeah.
The only thing that I noticed that they did forget about was the reflection in the mirrors in the Chozo ruins.
Those reflections do not only occur on the mirrors in the original Prime. The icy surfaces in Phandrana also reflect Samus's player model. But because those are organic shapes, Samus's model is usually so stretched out and, broken up that you may not even notice it is Samus's reflection you're seeing.
Yeah, but I just really noticed it in the mirrors, and I think it's
Yes.
just because the material they're using now just doesn't really support just throwing a player model as a reflection onto it. But I don't know. I think they should have found a way.
Yeah, that's obviously the reason. They have a different reflection and lighting model now, and that doesn't fit the reflection they used back then.
Yeah,
You lose a little bit of an Easter egg, which is unfortunate, but in return you get these newer visuals, which are more
really nice, and
important.
it has the normal mapping on it. It has the really nice yeah,
Yeah,
metallic look to it. Yeah,
yeah. Another neat detail: rain now leaves
yeah.
little droplets on your arm cannon. It already was splashing before in the Prime release. You saw the rain splashing onto your cannon, but I don't remember it leaving a lot of visible water drops. Now it
Yeah,
does, and it actually runs down the arm cannon. And
like where the
if
gravity is. Yeah.
yeah, and if you look up, the raindrops change direction and flow towards you, which wasn't in the original release as far as I remember.
That's a really nice touch, and I'm kind of curious how they did that because I would like to know the technique of that if I ever needed it.
I think they just did two animations. One,
Maybe
f-
yeah, just an animated
yeah,
normal.
one for standard and one for looking up, and they just swap between them depending on your orientation. Um,
Um,
I also really like the new particle effects.
yes.
It looks
I was
so
gonna
good
mention.
to blow up a turret from far away because the explosive sparks basically fill the entire room for a second before they fizzle out again.
Yeah.
And the arm cannon freezes over again if you charge your ice beam.
Did they take that out of the trilogy? I think.
Yes, that was missing in
I
the
like the
trilogy.
way the actual charge looks on the ice beam as well, where it's like sucking in air and just like
Yes,
creating
it
ice
looks
crystals on
so.
the edge.
Yes, it looks so cold and so.
Because it's like the ice kind of like crystallizes and then uncrystallizes really fast because it's kind of like artificially creating like just like a cold area in front of the gun.
You can really feel the wind it's creating. It's like if Samus was holding that gun next to your head, your hair would just blow all over the place. You know?
Yeah, you'd be able to cool off a room just by charging it.
Yes, that too. Um, most of the new charge effects and beam effects and particle and missile effects look very great. Um,
Yeah,
Morph ball bombs look a little strange, but maybe that's just my nostalgia
that's what I was
speaking.
gonna mention. The morph ball bombs and the regular charge beam have the same thing going on, and I think it's just they have a sphere with like just like an animated texture on it, which I liked the way it looked in the original, where it was kind of more of a like an energy ball,
Yeah.
and then in the original, the morph ball bombs looked more like kind of just like clusters of electricity.
Yes, now they look like gooey energy.
Yeah, gooey spheres of electricity, more like
Yeah. Not a problem. Really isn't a problem.
it. Yeah, it's just something that I wouldn't have done that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a matter of taste, I suppose. Personal
Yeah,
preference.
yeah.
Um, really like how the arm cannon now looks when the wave beam or plasma beam is shining through
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
That looks pretty cool too.
The textures are all animated and all that,
Yeah, if it even is a texture, I thought maybe it's some kind of
or like
shader.
well, the shader can use the texture.
True.
So, yeah, I think most animated textures that you see is just like the being manipulating a UV map.
Yes. Oh, since we're on the topic of animated textures, Echoes and Corruption had so many of them. So if they do remaster those games, I'm really excited to see how those turn out. I'm just
Yeah,
gonna.
like energy shield. Oh, the energy shields in this game, dude. Did you see like in the pirate base, like the energy shields? They've bumped up the details so much on those that it's like insane.
Yes. And they had
it no longer looks like, you know, you took a plane and added just kind of a texture onto it.
Yes.
It looks like this kind of rigid, kind of rough kind of line of like freaking how do I even describe it? It's like,
I thought it looked even a little bit like a strange liquid.
Yeah.
Which was awesome.
Or like just like it has a bunch of like electric currents running through it.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. It looks really, really awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna throw a couple of things out here. Dark Aether Remastered with the dark atmospheres and the bubbles and the ink liquefying themselves.
This is like waiting for Zen in the Black Mesa remaster.
And I exactly. I just started because next I'm gonna say Sanctuary Fortress Remastered. Dude. Yes.
Oh my god.
All the green milky glass with electricity running behind it and stuff.
Dude. The Valhalla.
Skytown.
Oh my god. Skytown, dude. Oh no. It's gonna be, that's exciting.
And the cutscenes. You know, a Prime game ideally shouldn't have too many cutscenes, but Corruption has a lot of them, and they're all great. They're gonna look awesome remastered.
Yes.
I agree. Like Rundus surfing on ice, which looks like the ice in the remastered Fendrana. Gandrada's transformation.
God, yeah. Gandrada's transformation. Her sassy bitch attitude.
Gore throwing your ship towards yourself.
Yeah.
Hyper mode.
Bitch, don't step on my toes with them fucking cowgirl fucking boots, bitch. Disgusting. Yeah, Gore. The corruption, like the just the different, all the different like corruption art throughout the game.
The Leviathans, the inside of them.
The bloodstream cutscene.
Wait,
with like the growing Phazon in Samus.
Oh yes, yeah, I know which one. The internal bloodstream. Yes.
Yeah.
Samus throwing up.
HD vomit.
Yes, HD vomit.
Oh my god. Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to in terms of like what they're gonna like, because the Prime was kind of like a launching point for just the absolute best creativity I've seen in gaming, basically.
Yeah. And this remastered version proves that all the people talking about how Prime is ahead of its time, they were not exaggerating. They were right.
Yeah.
This game, you can just release it in 2023 with newer graphics, and boom, there you go. AAA.
Game of the year already.
It's highly rated already.
We talk about that Metacritic score.
And I'm really...
It's already like a 90%, yeah, like...
I'll be curious to see how this game sells, because many people are just positively surprised. They're looking at it and they're like, wait a second, did Nintendo just drop a shooter? And it's looking somewhat photorealistic. What? How?
There's people that...
Why?
Are you saying there's like people that don't even follow Metroid? They're just like, wait, what?
Yeah, I saw it on Twitter. I saw a Twitter account which focuses around posting screenshots or short video loops of first-person shooter games. Because it's about the aesthetics of the first-person shooter. And they posted a little, looping video of Talon 4 Overworld with the raindrops and all of that.
That's really cool.
And people underneath were like,
Yeah,
This
that
is
kind of
some people were like, is this on Steam? And then the response was like, no, it's on Switch. And then they were like, you're kidding me, this cannot run
this
on
is
Switch.
Nintendo? What?
This can't run on Switch, and Nintendo doesn't make games like this. And then they were like, it is, and it's 60 frames per second. And they were like, how?
Holy shit! Yeah.
What witchcraft is this?
The retro engine, dude. It's got to be just the retro engine, and also their methodology is so good.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What else can I say? We're both really pleased with this Metroid Prime Remastered to such a degree that it holds a candle to the original. And
not just holds a candle. It if not overtakes it, it sits right next to it. You know.
Yeah, it may even overtake it. I cannot judge that now.
I think it's just my inner purism, my inner nerdness, just like saying that I want to also just keep replaying the original.
That's
in all honesty, for any normal person, like this is just a replacement for the original, like hands down. You know.
It may become my standard version. I'm still gonna play the old one. But this may be my standard Metroid Prime now. I really like it a lot.
Yeah.
And it's good enough where you can overlook most of the tiny little issues. Like there's a beam effect missing, the lighting here isn't correct. There could be 2 more, control options. But all of that is like the tiniest little dink.
Dude, imagine they put like mouse keyboard support where you can just plug the USB mouse and USB keyboard into your Switch.
That's the one thing I was asking for that we didn't get. And of course I knew we weren't going to get it. But that got me thinking. There are, at least for PlayStation and Xbox, but maybe for Switch too, keyboard and mouse combinations which output their signal over, the X input standard. So they're just being seen as controllers. Yeah, a couple years ago, this happens every couple years, where console first-person shooter gamers are complaining that some people don't use a controller. They just use a keyboard plus mouse combination on their PlayStation or Xbox and have a huge advantage in multiplayer games.
Yeah, just get good scrub. Good.
So I was thinking maybe such
Are you gonna ban turbo buttons from every person's home now?
Yeah, that's basically the argument of that discussion. But I was thinking maybe such a thing exists for the Switch. If it isn't too expensive, I may just get it, because as much as I love Prime Hack and the people who made that, they're probably not going to be able to make a Prime Hack for the remastered version anytime soon.
I think
and even
that would be worth looking into for them.
True. And I'm pretty sure that's going to come eventually, but that's going to be a couple years. It's an amateur hobby
and there's
project.
still the place to go for mouse and keyboard right now.
Yes.
So, like, there's still a reason for them to exist.
Yes.
But I also really appreciate it. But yeah, keep going.
What I was gonna say is, until we eventually maybe get a Metroid Prime Hack Remastered, which also means you gotta need a pretty good PC to emulate a Switch game,
Yeah.
Until that, maybe if available, I will just buy a very cheap Switch branded mouse plus keyboard combination. Use that with the dual stick control scheme and just play my own version of Metroid Prime Remastered with mouse and keyboard.
If that works, yeah.
It should work if such a controller exists. I'm curious. I'm gonna check it right now. Mouse and keyboard.
I don't know how
Switch.
they would translate mouse movement to joystick input. Unless it's literally just like, as long as your mouse is in motion, it's going to like register like that vector on your freaking thing. But that's the thing, is like you'd have to have a center point for your mouse and then just move your mouse around that center point. That would get really awkward. I don't think there's a direct translation from mouse to joystick.
I know there are converter sets where you can plug in your mouse and it gets converted into analog stick controls.
I don't know how they would accomplish that. Is what I'm saying. Like that was my whole point of what I was saying.
Well, I suppose that. Well, I don't know either, to be honest. But apparently it's possible. And in the future, I may look into that to see whether I
Yeah.
can play Remastered with mouse and keyboard control. And if I can't, I'll be fine. There's plenty of options, and even the classic GameCube control options pleases me a lot. I'm happy that option is back. I sometimes feared that maybe because that original control scheme wasn't appreciated by a lot of people, and because it's so old and kind of antiquated, that any new Metroid Prime release is not gonna have it.
Yeah,
not even just referring to a remaster of Prime. It could have been a full-out remake or a Prime 4. I always felt like maybe the GameCube style controls are not gonna make it. But apparently they made it into the remastered version, and now I'm very happy. I have all I need. Yeah, I'm gonna be curious to see how well this is gonna sell.
Yeah, sales numbers wise. I mean, obviously critically it's already like top of the chart, right? which was interesting to see. You were showing me even what journalist was it? Was it Polygon?
Yeah, someone from Polygon, which is a website that has been criticized a lot, to say it, to take it easy on them.
Were they the ones that like complained about Dark Souls?
I think they may have been, but their opinion on Metroid Prime Remastered, I can only agree with. For those listening who do not know what we're talking about, they basically said that Metroid Dread has you running through the world, which is why the whole world becomes a blur you leave behind as you rush forwards. While Metroid Prime has you investigate.
Sorry. It just hit me. They're making the same exact point that I was making, which was called bullshit and completely like discounted, right?
Yes. Well,
I was saying, the faster you move in a game, the less, the more the game pushes you forward, the less you're gonna like absorb the environment.
Well, if that point is not valid, then Polygon and the two of us are apparently the only persons on this planet who are being entirely wrong. But I stand by my opinion. I don't think it is wrong.
No, I don't either.
And I mean,
like the movement speed of a character, and also like just kind of how the game design, whether it encourages. Ooh, I'm seeing water ripples. I'm watching back my playthrough. Whether the game design encourages you to stay in a place, plus your movement speed, do have an impact on how the world feels, and like it's. If you're suggesting otherwise, it's because you're probably just defending something that, just out of an instinct to defend it, right?
Or you just don't have the sensibility to notice the difference.
Maybe you just genuinely aren't like, you don't know what it is that I'm referring to,
We talked about this. Metroid Dread has nice visuals, and some of the maps or the rooms in there are really nice to look at.
Yeah.
But you still just feel the difference if you're entering a new room in Prime. The first thing you often do is just stand there and look around.
Yeah. Well, what I usually do is throw on the scan visor immediately.
Yeah, of course. Immediately check what you gotta find here. And even though there's nothing new to scan here, it's the old lore as it should be, it's still good to have a contemporary Metroid game which has a scan visor.
Yes.
I missed it so much.
Yeah, maybe the impact of scanning things will be more relevant to people, because Prime came out at the time before word of mouth was super. Well, I don't want to say word of mouth was super relevant because there was the news outlets, there was like reviewers and stuff still, but it wasn't like this internet culture where everything was like any news was across the world in 0.5 seconds from when it happened.
That's another aspect I find really interesting and which is gonna impact the sales, because Metroid Prime released during a time where the internet wasn't as well established and as connected to everyone as it is now. But you had a lot of marketing and reviews and talks about Metroid Prime. This time it's the exact opposite. This was a shadow drop. No marketing, no TV spots, no trailers, it just dropped straight out of a direct.
And it's blowing the fuck up.
And people are talking about it, so maybe, I don't know for sure, maybe it's gonna sell not so well because Nintendo didn't market it. Maybe it's gonna sell really well.
Well, it's an affordable price, it's immediately available digitally.
Yes.
So like, if someone's and everyone's talking about it, it's beautiful. So people are the bar to entry is very low for this game right now.
It probably also wasn't as expensive to develop as Dread was, because Dread
Maybe
was
not
developed from the ground up,
Right, yeah, because there was an actual game underneath what they actually had to develop with Prime.
So maybe
Remaster.
Maybe they don't need to sell it all that much to break even. Maybe they maybe they'll start profiting of Metroid Prime Remastered when it sells 1 million. And then maybe it sells 2 million, which would be less than
and then it'll sell release. like any other game, and then the profits are going to be a lot more than you're probably right about that.
Despite just $40, it's cheaper to buy, but it probably was cheaper to develop too. And maybe, we don't know, but maybe this thing will just blow up. Because, let me check real quick, Metroid Prime, the original sales numbers, that was about 2.84 million, right?
I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I do have a graphic for it, but I'd have to go digging for it.
So, the GameCube sold about 22 million times, right? I'm saying right, even though you don't know it.
I'm gonna let you say the numbers because I don't have them in front of me.
The GameCube sold close to 22 million, and Metroid Prime sold 2.84 million. So, if we calculate 22 via 2.8.4. we get that about 8% of all GameCube owners bought Metroid Prime.
Okay.
Now, the Nintendo Switch sold, we just got new numbers recently, 120.46 million units. So,
which is like 6 times as much? No, 6 times as much?
Yeah, so if we multiply that now, if we say the amount of Switch users buying Prime will be as big as with the GameCube, then we're talking over 8 million copies sold.
Which, how much was the original Prime?
The original Prime was 2.84 million.
So that's already, I mean, if you're just looking at the raw numbers, that's already doing pretty well. What about other Switch games?
The install base is just so much bigger on the Switch.
Yeah, I'm saying what about other Switch games? What are those numbers?
Hold on a second. So Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is the best-selling Switch game. I knew that from the back of my head. It sold 52 million copies.
Okay.
By the way, just a little side note. I think Metroid being back is partially due to Nintendo having shit tons of money right now. They can afford to make Metroid games even if they don't sell very well.
Yeah, that's actually a good point too.
Then we got Animal Crossing, it's 42 million about. Smash Bros. Is a bit over 30 million. Breath of the Wild is closing in on 30 million. And if we scroll down, we get to, for example, Nintendo Switch Sports, which has sold 8.6 million. That's what Metroid
so the attachment,
Prime... that's the same attachment rate as the original Metroid Prime on GameCube. About, plus minus something.
Yeah. Okay. So then if we have a greater attachment rate, then we're going to see more than at least Switch Sports, right?
Exactly. So it's possible. All of these are just assumptions, but it would be possible for Metroid Prime Remastered to break 10 million. Which would make it the best-selling Metroid game by far.
What's Dread sitting at?
Dread sale numbers are... Hold up, I'm gonna check it.
It could also be... do you think just a greater in the greater gaming landscape a bias against 2D?
Yes. And to be clear, I don't think Dread deserves that bias. There's many reasons for why Dread may be disappointing. But I don't hate Dread for being a 2D game, and I don't think it should financially fail because it's a 2D game. That's not what I want for Dread. So Dread has... up until May 2022, sold 2.9 million copies. Let's just say by now it's at... Let's be generous. Let's say it's at 5 million copies. Probably not, because the most sales occur during the release window, But let's say it's at 5 million copies. If Prime has the same attachment rate on the Switch as it had on the GameCube, then it would beat that by over 3 million copies. If the attachment rate is even higher, if Prime Remastered becomes a success comparable to the Super Mario 3D re-release or Luigi's Mansion 3, then it's gonna break over 10 million and thus is going to sell more than double as much as Dread.
So I do remember there being a statement about Dread being the highest selling Metroid game. That doesn't mean that Metroid is more popular than it's ever been. Well, let's say proportionally more popular than it's ever been, right?
That depends of your process of measurement. If you just look at absolute numbers, Dread is the winner. No competition about it, But if you look at the general gaming landscape, I think things are going to look a bit
historically,
different.
The series has been pretty unpopular.
Yes, exactly. And even Dread's sales numbers are not huge. It's, as I said, let's assume it sold 5 million copies, right?
Mm-hmm.
If that is correct, then it has been beaten by Kirby and the Forgotten Land. It has been beaten by the remake of Link's Awakening.
That's an interesting point.
If it sold 5 million copies, then it just beat Mario Tennis Aces.
Okay.
So, of course it's also possible for Prime to just flop. We don't know. Maybe we're just in a bubble and all the people which are loving it, maybe that's just 100,000 people which are just spamming the internet right now and everybody else didn't take notice.
We got to see if it's borne out in the actual consumers, right?
Yes. That's going to be interesting. I could imagine...
The silent majority, right?
Yeah, I could imagine it selling good just because of how impressive it looks. Just people... I was talking to my boss, who's also a video game fan, and I was like, I immediately bought the game for $40. And he was like, dude, did you just buy a re-release for $40? What's wrong with you? Why would you pay so much money? And I was like, hold on a second. I opened YouTube and I played a video of the remastered Metroid Prime. Of course, in Phendrana Drifts, because that area is beautiful. And I showed it to him and he was like, damn, that looks really, really good.
Yeah. That's awesome.
By the way, both Minecraft and Among Us outsold Metroid Dread on the Switch.
Oh, well, duh.
Not by much.
Oh, not by much. That's an interesting thing. I was thinking, because those games are literally mass appeal, like, this is the game that every 3-year-old is playing.
True, but
in the world, like,
the Switch kinda came late, you know? Minecraft on the Switch came years after the hype. And Among Us is basically mostly on PC, you know?
I figured Minecraft was more of like an evergreen thing where it's just always going to be huge.
True. Well, Minecraft is huge. It sold several million on the Switch, but it's not gonna sell 30 million when everybody already has Minecraft on PC and smartphone and PlayStation, you know?
Maybe not. Yeah, maybe. It would be for the market of people who have a Switch and don't have another gaming system to play Minecraft on, because it is for everything at this point.
I also noticed the sale numbers of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze are surprisingly low. Not that it was a flop, but considering how much Donkey Kong Country Returns, the first Donkey Kong Country by Retro Studios, sold, it's a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, and I was gonna say I was looking for it in stores, and this was after its initial release and everything, and it just wasn't anywhere.
Yeah.
So like I couldn't get my hands on a physical copy.
Yeah, I'm still considering buying Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze for the Switch, which I don't have because I have the Wii U version.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm gonna buy it one day when I find it for a really good price, you know?
Yeah.
Right now, I have no problem not buying it because I'm buying Metroid Prime Remastered twice. I already bought it digitally since I couldn't wait.
I think if they're gonna do the whole trilogy as one package, then I'll not get the physical version of Prime.
I don't think they'll be doing that. If they do, then I'm just gonna buy it again. I'm sorry. I'm a consumer when it comes to Prime.
Yeah. You got your vinyl, you got your Metroid, you got your The Thing merch.
I also hope maybe I'm gonna actually write a letter to the book publisher Dark Horse, who's publishing these great Zelda and Odyssey, Mario Odyssey and Splatoon art books. Maybe I'm gonna text them like, Metroid Prime got a re-release. There may be a Metroid Prime 2 and 3 re-release, and we're gonna get a Metroid Prime 4. How about you contact Retro Studios and Nintendo and see whether you can finally give us an art book on the work of Retro Studios?
Yeah.
Because the next Zelda game, Tears of the Kingdom, is gonna have a little art book in the special edition, which seems about the size of the Metroid Dread art book. And the Metroid Dread art book was really great. Now, unfortunately, I don't think Metroid Prime Remastered is gonna have any special editions or anything like that. Not even sure.
It feels like an iteration kind of release, right? Like.
Yeah, and I think it dropped so quickly they're kind of done with it already. They're gonna keep promoting it a bit on social media. I
hope they patch it. I really do hope they patch it.
I wasn't talking about that, but if you announce a game 1 year in advance, they're gonna drop a new trailer every 2 months. They're gonna have, social media events. They're gonna talk about it. They're gonna have it air on TV. I don't think they're gonna have much to promote Metroid Prime now. They're just gonna promote it over social media, and that's it.
Yeah, and I guess does that mean that the Metroid's still kind of like the middle child?
No, I think Nintendo are somewhat underestimating their own product here. I think Nintendo is kind of like, yeah, it's just a remaster. We can't even charge $60 for it. We're just gonna. You didn't see the direct, right?
I didn't watch it.
There
No.
was no like hype for it. It wasn't like, check out what we get next, and the screen goes dark, and then
It's
you
just
hear
like
music or
it's
something.
it's literally one of those things where it's like, check out what we have upcoming for this year, and then it's like the slide, and then just it slides into Metroid Prime Remastered.
Exactly.
That's so disrespectful.
They were like, all right, we talked about GBA on the Switch now. Let's keep continuing with more headlines. And then the next headline already had a screenshot of the Mother Parasite, and underneath it was the original Metroid Prime game, now remastered. And like, wait,
just
what?
Just like, here's a neat little thing for you, yeah.
Yeah, like a side thing. I totally think they could have made...
And that was basically the main takeaway of the Direct, right? So...
That and the new Zelda trailer, of course. And Pikmin 4 was
I never saw that, but okay. I'll probably pick up the new Zelda if it's anything like Breath of the Wild, you know.
Don't watch the trailer. You're not missing anything. Yeah. Go into it without a spoiler, you know? But yeah, they just dropped it. I think Nintendo believes this is just, for the niche market. I think they could have made a big marketing campaign and be like hardcore shooter, exploration, sci-fi,
hardcore shooter,
Doom-like graphics. Well, it's certainly one of the more hardcore games on the Switch, isn't it?
That would have hurt. That would have hurt me. Yeah, I get what you're saying though. They could have definitely like reached out to maybe an audience that they were targeting for it, but I think the target audience was gonna be just Nintendo fans, people who already knew about Prime 1 anyway.
Yeah, I think what they're gonna do is market these remasters a little bit, and then have a big marketing campaign for Prime 4. And if people are like, ooh, Prime 4 is interesting, this looks really great, but I've never played a Prime game before, Nintendo's just gonna be like, remember, all previous Prime games are remastered on the Switch.
Kind of like how they just never announced it, but they put the Prime trilogy just on the Wii U.
Well, they did announce that during the Direct even, but it wasn't a huge thing. Where they announced the return of the Virtual Console, which now features Wii titles, and they were like, one of the first to come is Metroid Prime Trilogy, and if you buy it now, you get half price off.
Okay, I wasn't there for that Direct, I guess.
So yeah,
I never heard any news about that. I just kind of found it on the Wii Shop at one point, and I was like, "Yo, what?"
What? I never bought that version because I have the physical version, and the Wii U plays that.
Yeah, and I didn't, so that's why I got the digital.
Also, ever since the GameCube, we didn't have a single home console version by Nintendo, which didn't have a Metroid Prime game. And beginning with the Nintendo DS, we also didn't have a handheld without a Metroid Prime game.
The 3DS had, I guess, Federation Force, if you want to count that.
It. It's a Metroid Prime title. I know people don't love it. Most of them hate it. It's a Metroid Prime game, though.
It's a spin-off.
Sure, of course. Hunters is too. Pinball is too.
I guess, yeah.
But my point is being the Metroid Prime
But at least Hunters had a Metroidvania in it.
Yeah, it had a tiny little Metroidvania in it, which was cute. But my point being, the Metroid Prime brand had titles releasing on every single Nintendo console since the GameCube, including the handhelds.
I was gonna gush about Hunters for a second.
It
had some good atmosphere. It was immersive, man. There was some good moments.
It was spooky too.
Yes, there was some tense scares and stuff.
And a little bit of Hunter's flair is in this remaster because of the dual stick controls and the new rapid fire thingy. So a tiny bit of Fat Force too with the hybrid motion control gyro thing.
Yeah. At least control scheme wise, but with Hunters, I was gonna say the scans were still all there and it worked really well. There was that new threat called Gorilla, which scared the shit out of me.
Was a cool final boss.
Yeah, but I had like this moment when I was scanning through. I was in the Vesper Defense Outpost, and there was like a room full of nothing but like lore entries,
Yeah.
building up Gorilla as this massive like unknown threat. And so I was like literally thinking Gorilla was like right behind me, about to like kill me or something. So I was like so scared. Because I didn't understand that was for foreshadowing for the end of the game.
Yeah.
I thought that was literally like there's something in the station right now
Yes.
that's like crawling through the vents.
By the way, I just thought of something, you know? Let's assume our wish comes true and we get Echoes Remastered and Corruption Remastered and then Prime 4. How great is it gonna be to play Corruption Remastered 100% and get that Silex cutscene after the credits and then play Prime 4, possibly with Silex as the antagonist?
Yeah.
Gonna lead right into it. It's like watching the shitty Thing prequel and then immediately watch the original with the dog scene leading from one into the other.
Yeah. Isn't there like you said there was a supercut someone made?
I think there is, yeah. I think someone cut both movies together. But I never watched that because why would I watch the
Why would you
prequel
watch
so
the
much?
prequel? Yeah.
I really only watch it for interest, you know?
For educational purposes.
Yeah, basically, yeah. But back to Prime, yeah, that ages years old little cliffhanger of Silex's ship. It's gonna be so relevant if they really remaster all these games and then drop Prime 4 onto us.
Yeah. It's gonna be like nothing ever happened. It's gonna be like
Yeah. And also, how nice is it gonna look to have these tidy, neat little Switch cases, 4 of them, Metroid Prime 1 to 4, in your shelf.
nice, and you could just line them up. Yep,
Yeah.
that would be cool.
Gonna line them right up next to the original GameCube trilogy.
This game is just so impressively, just the fact that they were able to accomplish these visuals.
Yeah, everything was speaking against them. They were competing with one of the best looking games of all times, with all of the best art styles of all times, which of course invites very unfavorable comparisons. They're working on the Switch, which is the least powerful.
What do you mean one of the best games of all time? Like what are you comparing it to?
Well, the original Metroid Prime. When they were making the visuals for this remastered versions, of course they knew people are gonna compare it to Metroid Prime and to their impression of Metroid Prime, you know? People who played Metroid Prime are going into the remastered version expecting the best looking game ever, basically.
Yeah.
So they had to compete with that, and they're also developing for the Switch, which is pretty weak performance-wise. And Retro may have been in some trouble the last couple years since they didn't output very much. And yet, despite all of that, they pulled through. It's kind of a repeat of the original Prime, which was developed under very bad, circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And yet turned out to be a masterpiece. And now we have this studio, which many people already, are critical towards, like, they're saying Retro is basically dead and all of that.
Who's saying that?
A lot of people, because we didn't get a game since Tropical Freeze.
Okay.
Which was in, let me check, Tropical Freeze Wii U release 2014.
Most people also aren't. Well, no, most people should be aware that Prime 4 is a thing.
True, but Retro only got their hands on that like 3 years ago. And Tropical Freeze is 9 years old now.
Oh my god.
9 years without a new Retro Studios game. People were very concerned about Retro Studios. Like, I was happy Retro Studios got Prime 4, but other people were like, well, they could have given it to any studio. Who knows what Retro Studios is like nowadays, you know?
Well, it's not like
But
because
this,
they have a company. Well, we got so many like interviews and stuff that we now know. They have like a very solid company methodology and everything, right?
true. And I believe even if you hire a lot of new people and the veterans leave, some of those vibes are going to bleed through to the newer generations. Some of the company philosophy is still going to remain intact even if you switch out the team.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my point being is we went for so many years without a Retro Studios game, and some people were concerned, with good reason maybe. And now we got Metroid Prime Remastered, and it bodes so well for Prime 4.
It does. No, you're right. Because it was a mentality changer. Like me, I even you even heard in the last podcast that I was talking about just being blackpilled about the series just because it feels like it had been mistreated for so long. And one thing I wanted to mention was Prime Remaster is like the first Metroid game since Prime 3 that felt like it handled the series properly.
Yep. Last time on our podcast, we said that Dread may be the best Metroid game since Corruption. Now it isn't anymore.
Yeah.
Metroid Prime Remastered, it's not a new game.
It's not a new game. That's the
but
thing.
It's a new release of a game, and that new release of a game is now the best Metroid game since Corruption. Since Echoes, probably. Because Corruption is only halfway a Metroid game.
Yeah. Probably, yeah, you could say that, yeah.
It speaks volumes to the quality.
So I guess if you wait, so which came first, Echoes or Zero Mission?
Zero Mission, I believe.
Okay. So yeah, since Echoes.
Since Echoes and Zero Mission.
Yeah.
You know, it speaks volumes about the quality of this remaster, that we are seriously how do you say, comparing it to the original trilogy. And not like, looking down on it, like, yeah, it kind of gets there. No, we are seriously putting it up against the legendary Metroid Prime
I mean,
trilogy.
They had these, yeah, the artists knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I like the UI redesign as well.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Mm-hmm. I was really curious for Prime 4 to see how the HUD of Samus Aran would look on, an HD presentation. Well,
now you got it.
Yeah, now we got it. And interestingly enough, since this is still a remaster of an old game, they didn't change it up too much.
Yeah, a few colors are different, but I mean, other than that.
Yeah, notice there are some green lines in the scan visor.
Green lines?
Some very subtle and fine green lines in the scan visor. Some new elements there.
Yeah, it doesn't feel exactly like the Prime HUD. In many aspects. Oh, one thing I did notice? When you're in an elevator, did you hold L?
Yeah.
Your view slowly shifts upwards.
Oh, really?
In the original GameCube. And that's because when you're holding L in the original GameCube game, what it's doing is it's locking you onto a point that's like several miles away.
Yeah, somewhere in the skybox.
But in this one, it just kind of locks your view where you're at, and it's kind of a different thing. I think that was kind of like a hacky way around trying to like create strafing. But when there's nothing to lock onto. What I was saying is what was I saying? Oh, that's not there in this version. If you hold the lock on button while you're in an elevator, you're just gonna stay level.
Yeah, and the original Prime, when you lock on with the L button without a target, you still have a little bit of a strafe. because you are circling around a target which is miles away. It's just easy to overlook because the circle you're walking is so huge. The curvature is almost identical to a straight line on small distances, you know?
Yes,
But
and you know,
in
no room
this,
in the game is going to be large enough to encapsulate that sphere of
yeah,
radiance.
right. You can notice it, but it's really subtle. In this new version, when you hold L, I think you are actually walking a straight line,
Yes.
which is probably a result of them reworking the log-on function for the new control schemes.
Yeah. I don't know what it was that made them have to do it that old way, but it was a weird quirk of how Prime worked. Oh, and here I am watching my footage, and I came across the Among Us scan. The hunter is among us.
The hunter is among us, yeah. Oh yeah, this also once more stresses how the Japanese and European-based version of the lore is apparently canonical. Because I assume I played it in German. I assume you played it in English, and you probably had
the PAL version lore.
exactly.
That's what I got out of it. Yeah. So the NTSC version was version 1. Every version, including the trilogy, including the PAL version, was changed after that first release. So that first release should not be taken as canonical.
Yeah.
But I still really like their writing style in the first release. There's a little bit of that's missing in the newer ones.
Yeah, I understand that. I too like both versions. I prefer the second one only due to reasons of consistency, since I like the trilogy as a whole, you know?
Yes, and yeah, if I'm gonna play the whole trilogy, it might as well be the updated lore. Yeah.
Yeah. So how about we conclude our thoughts on Metroid Prime Remastered, which came out of nowhere and blessed us with pure joy.
Yeah. I would say the biggest takeaway from this is just my hope in the series has been, somewhat revitalized. It's still there's still always going to be just like that hipster in me that's just like nobody gets it, nobody understands, but
nobody but me and Fikes.
I'm still very satisfied with this release, and it bodes well for the future of the series.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember seeing like the cover you sent to me, and I was just like, damn, Samus looks like such a Chad in that cover.
Yes. She got her prime time back.
Because to me, it looked like the Prime suit, but it looked like freaking new. And so I was like, what the like that was the image was the first thing I saw. And then I read your text. So I was just like, what the fuck? What?
What is this?
It's like, oh, that's the Prime suit. What?
Wait, what?
Anyway. You can conclude with your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think I said that in the last podcast. I said something like, or maybe I said it to you in private. I said, there's a good chance 2023 will be one of my favorite years in gaming ever. Because there's a chance we'll be getting Pizza Tower and Hollow Knight Silksong and Tears of the Kingdom and Prime 4 all in 1 year. Now, I'm still not sure whether we're gonna see Prime 4 this year.
But we get
Metroid Prime Remastered instead, out of nowhere. And maybe there's a chance for Echoes, Corruption, and Prime 4 in the near future, so...
I would say maybe they space them out like 1 year per release or something.
I think maybe one each 6 months, so Metroid Prime 4 in 2 years?
Maybe.
Like next year.
That would be Christmas.
Christmas next year. And maybe Echoes during this E3 and Corruption during early next year. And then Prime 4 is going to be shown during E3 next year. And maybe that's the release scheme they're aiming for. If that is true, then 2023 and 2024 are gonna be amazing years in gaming.
Yes. It's exciting.
Yes.
I think that, yeah.
And to once more conclude on Metroid Prime Remastered, once we're done talking here, I'm gonna go back and play Metroid Prime Remastered again.
Did you wanna make this a shorter podcast, or did you have any interest in continuing what we had before? Maybe we can save that for next time.
Let's do it next time. This is such a nice episode on Metroid Prime Remastered, and it's pretty much exactly 2 hours now because I've been recording, and it's 2 hours and 22 seconds. So
yes,
that's perfect.
Yeah. I don't know what else there is to say about it. It's solid. I recommend it, especially if you haven't played any of the Prime games. But even if you have, I recommend it.
Yes.
It's a good price. It's a legendary series, legendary game.
Yeah, you can't go very wrong with it. Even if you end up not liking it, for the cheap price of $40, you're gonna experience a milestone of gaming design. So see it as education, if you will.
Yeah. Okay. I suppose we've kind of concluded our thoughts on Prime Remaster, so that'll about do it for this podcast, I suppose.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you had fun. We certainly had fun. Next time we're gonna talk about the Metroid Dread discussion again. That's also gonna be a lot of fun. I kind of feel like the vibes may be a bit different now that we're in such a positive mood.
Yeah, I think things are gonna be a bit different.
There's really no reason to fight anymore. Everybody got what they wanted.
Right. And fighting wasn't really my intent anyway.
No, that just happened. But now we really have no reason to. Let them have Dread. Yeah. Let us have Metroid Prime.
Right. Yeah, and if it comes to that, I'll just identify myself as just a Metroid Prime fan and not a Metroid fan.
Pronouns Metroid/Prime.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night. See you guys.